Hello everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's video lesson we're going to paint a very simple little seascape. We're going to work with sky, water, and some rock. Nothing terribly fancy, but just something to get you started. And what I'm working on is a piece of Masonite. You can see there's paint on here and there's graphite marks, and just to show you that you don't have to go out and spend $50 on a back stapled canvas, something that's really fancy. Just to get you started, work on something small, just to get you comfortable with your paints and with your brushes, and then work to something bigger. Something smaller is less intimidating. And I've got a lot of videos with little 2.5 by 3.5 projects and a lot of little 4x6s. And then there are some that are larger, but just get yourself started with something small. And I'm going to show you how to prep this. And this is just Masonite I picked up from one of the big box stores. You want to make sure you get the one that's not shiny, because that's got an oil base on it. So this is just unprimed. You can use Masonite, MDF, you can use plywood, birch, whatever wood you want. You can use a canvas if you have it. You can use watercolor paper, as long as it's not too rough, because it just makes it a little bit harder to put the paint on. Anything that accepts acrylic paint. Pretty simple. And what I'm working with today is DecoArt's line of the DecoArt media, the white gesso. That's going to prime the Masonite. And I'm going to be using the professional acrylics, the Traditions, Phthalo blue, Ultramarine blue, Hansa yellow light, yellow oxide, burnt sienna, and titanium white. And while I'm painting, if I find that my paints start to dry really quickly, I'll throw in a couple of drops of the extender and blending medium. I also have a little spray bottle of water. And if I end up having to pull out, I've got the rest of my extended palette, which is permanent alizarin crimson, naphtha red light, and daryl yellow. If I have to pull those colors in or other colors, I'll let you know when that time comes. We'll go there. All right. And to paint this, now I have some synthetic brushes and I have a natural brush. I'm not sure if I'm going to need all of these, but it's always best just to have everything ready. That way I don't have to search for it. And these are the Aqualon brushes with the acrylic handles. Now I typically use these for mixed media, not for doing paintings like this, but thought I'd give them a try just to see how it works. The brushes are in rough shape, and I wanted to do this because a lot of beginners contact me and they say, oh, I picked up some really cheap brushes and they're not doing the job. What do? I'm going to show you that even with brushes, these are really good quality brushes, but they are really rough. They don't hold a chisel edge very well. Show you how we can do our painting. So what I've got is a number 12, a number 10, a number 8, and a number 6. And a 4 shader, and a number 2 and a number 4 round, and then I have a little number 2 round bristle brush, which is also in a very rough shape. And this is the Regis brush. Now you don't have to have all of these. This is just what I'm going to be using. And I'm going to put those, and when I put the brushes on I'll either put them on the table or on the palette. I like putting them in proper order so they're easy to find. Oh, and you know what I forgot to get? Oh, my number 8 Bristle Bright, my soft grip brush. I love this brush for doing priming. So I'm just going to take the brush dry, and I'm going to put this on here, and we're going to prime this. I don't want to paint directly onto the Masonite. And this gesso is super thick, because what I like to do is when I open a new container of gesso, there's some that with the, I've got one container, when I open it, it's not thick like this, it's a little bit more fluid. And then I'll take another container, like I had this one here, and I'll leave it open, and I'll stir it and stir it and stir it. And I'll do that for a couple of hours just to thicken it up, because there's sometimes I do want super thick gesso. And if you have super thick gesso, you could always add water to it to thin it down. You see what I'm doing here? I'm working with primarily horizontal strokes. And what this is doing is this is also putting texture into, it's going to put texture into the painting. And what I'm going to be doing, I'm not going to do this all on camera, is 2 light but even coats, making sure that all the Masonite is covered. But not too thick. If you put it on too thick like this, it'll take a long time to dry. So I like 2 light even coats. So I'll let that dry, then I'll come back with another layer and I'll just come in. So letting that layer dry, coming in, putting another one here. I already have a piece prepared. Okay, just like that. And doing this priming, it's always nice to do this ahead of time so you're not stuck doing it while you're painting. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. And here's a little piece that I have ready. And you can see this one, I already have I'll have a mark on it. I'm not going to worry about it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to think of, okay, well, I'm going to be putting, there's going to be a sky here, some distant mountains, there's going to be a big cliff here, there's going to be some water here and some other rocks. And when you see the painting at the end, you're going to see you don't need a ton of paint. You just need to do a little bit of color mixing. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna with some water, with a lot of water actually. This is going to be for my sketching. Now you can use charcoal if you want, you can use graphite. And I should be working on an easel, but this is a little small. So I'm thinking I'm going to work my horizon line. This needs to be straight. So my horizon line is going to be there, and I'm thinking I'm going to put, putting some rocks here, and I'm going to possibly put maybe another rock here. And I'll have some distant mountains coming up here. This is all going to be covered. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at for my sketch. And put that out of the way. And I'm thinking that's probably even too big for this, but we'll see what happens. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my number 12 brush and I'm going to put some titanium white. You can use gesso if you want. We're going to work this wet on wet. And I go just past that mountain line. I can even go a little bit past the rock here. If you have a canvas that you can, or an easel you can work from, that's always nice to do. So wet on wet, meaning, okay, now we have to work with paint right away. So I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue on my wet brush and a speck, I'm talking a tiny speck of phthalo blue. I'm going to come up here and I'm painting left to right to get the color applied. And you can actually leave it like that, showing some distance, some little clouds here. That's completely up to you. I'm going to come in with just a little bit more paint. I'm going to work it down just a little bit because I don't want a horizon line showing. And acrylics will dry darker. So before you start making some major adjustments, let the paint dry. I already know what the paint will do, so I'm coming in with a little bit more phthalo blue. I'm using X strokes coming in. Very light pressure. And I'm just painting some of that in there. So you can see that some of that titanium white showing through, and it looks like there's some wispy clouds in there. Totally up to you if you want to do that. Pretty cool. I'm gonna let that dry. And now to do the water basically is a reflection of this. So it's this backwards, and I am going to be changing the color just a speck. I'm going to make it a little bit more on the green side. So what I'm going to be doing is repeating the same thing, Repeating the same thing, but I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to this. But I need to mix up the color for the yellow. Let that dry. So let's see, I'll put that aside and I'll get a little round brush. So with the water to make it a bit more green, and I've got color theory videos on how, you know, which blues and which yellows to choose to make, you know, green. So we're looking at making a blue-green. So ultramarine blue and Hansa yellow light makes a very different type of blue-green. And it's because ultramarine blue is more on the violet side. Violet and yellow are opposites on the color wheel. So let's go into phthalo blue, which you don't need a lot. That's too green. A bit more blue. And we'll take a little bit of white. It's a much cooler blue. I can take a little bit more of that green. Now let's make it the same value so you can really get a good comparison. There we go. So very different. Two different blues, but the same yellow makes something very different. And this looks more like an ocean color. So on the bottom of the ocean, you've got the moss and all that stuff, seaweed, which is all green. So for this purpose of this freestyle painting, I'm going to be using this color right here. But what happens if we mix the two together? Well, if we take a little bit of this ultramarine blue in here, what did we get? That's why sometimes it's nice just to mix the two together. You don't get something that's as vibrant. Okay, you don't get something that's as vibrant. So depending on, you know, the setting in your water, you can really choose either one. And I'm thinking now I'm leaning a little bit more towards this one here. So not as green. So this is maybe right in between, right here. Alrighty. Look over here. And I'm going to take number 10. So I already know that I'm going to be using some phthalo blue, speck of Hansa yellow light, a little bit of ultramarine blue. And now because I'm making fresh paint, really what I should be doing is just making a swatch as well, because this is hard to see. If it wasn't for the video lights, I'd actually be doing my mixing right on the palette, my glass palette with the gray paper behind it. And we'll take a little bit of white. That's still a little bit too blue. There we go. So I'm going to take some white and I'm going to come back in here. And you can see I already have a dirty brush, so that's fine. And I'm going to work this right over everything. Work it right over everything. You could leave it just like that if you wanted to. I mean, that's really pretty. You gotta make sure, you've got to make sure that your horizon line is straight. So if you need to get a ruler to do that, be my guest. And the benefit that if we are a bit off, we are painting some background mountains, so it's not going to be that hard. So then I'm going to take some of that blue and I'm going to come in. Now I do have the mountain here, but let's just put it in here just so you can practice the technique. And now what we're going to do is we're going to these wide strokes. And see, I'm pressing a little, using a little bit more pressure to get some of these lines in here. But you want them to be horizontal, not on angles. Okay, I'm using the brush now more on the corner. Now I'm using it more than chisel edge, which is, and this brush is so worn out, I'm not getting these really crisp lines because it's so worn out, which makes it nice to create some really nice and soft lines. Okay, you see where this is going up a little bit. If I was doing this as a whole piece, I would come back in, I would level all this out. In my painting, I'm not even going to see this horizon line here, this whole thing straight across, because I'm going to be having the mountains here and the big cliff here. Come back in with a bit more darker paint, and what we want to do is we want to darken the water as it comes forward. Things are starting to dry now. So what you run the risk now when you're painting, and this is starting to dry, you run the risk of putting your brush painting and then the paint coming up. So keep that in mind. And you can say, well, just spray the surface with water. Yeah, sometimes that'll work, but sometimes if it's dried too much, you'll actually lift the paint up. And I take a little bit of white, or you can even just take a little tiny speck of water on your brush. There we go. And making sure that some parts I have the pressure, see, pushing the paint, then coming back in with the corner of the brush to soften it. You get all that nice motion in the water. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit more ultramarine blue in there. I'm going to come in here, and you can do this for as long as you want. Putting just a few hits of the ultramarine blue mixture. You get a little bit darker pockets. I like that. Alrighty. So we can work on the mountain in the back. So I'm going to go down to the next smaller brush. Actually, let's just get rid of this. Because you know what happens, if you've been following me for a while, you know what happens when I'm using phthalo blue, right? I get most of it on everything but the painting. So I'm working with my little number 8 brush now, and we're going to work the background mountains. The background mountains, I want them to be like a blue-violet, but more on the gray side. So the easy peasy mixture for that, we're going to take some ultramarine blue. And guess what I forgot to put out? So we do need some red. Permanent alizarin crimson, a tiny amount. And this is not the true alizarin crimson. True alizarin crimson will fade. This is a very close substitute. So a tiny touch of permanent alizarin crimson to make it more violet, and a little bit of burnt sienna. I can see a skin starting to form, so I'm just going to give these a mist. And we know that paint swatch, I should actually have my color mixing journal handy so you can see the true underlying color. So that's a true underlying. We're not going to paint the mountains that color, but that's a true underlying color. It's more of a mauve, a dusty mauve. Okay. Just going to make up a little bit more. So ultramarine blue, a speck of alizarin crimson, tiny bit of burnt sienna. Burnt sienna grays it down. So what we're looking at doing is we're going to make our mark, and oh, that's really dark. So we're going to add a little bit of white. Don't forget, acrylics dry darker. So I'm going to come in, and now I'm going to work the brush down. This brush, even this, is a little bit big, but let's just work with what we have. So I am making my lines going across. I'm not worried about the water line. You'll also notice, I forgot to tell you that my horizon, this horizon line, I didn't put it smack dab right in the middle of the canvas or the Masonite. You want to work top third area, bottom third area. That's just composition. Now I'm going to work this mountain all the way across. You notice I'm working small, but then I can come back and I can make it a little bit bigger. You don't want it to grow too much. I'm going to bring that right to about here. Right to about there, because I have another mountain that's going to be starting. So right there, let's turn this around, and now we're going to work the bottom. And this is where you can help get stuff straight. Oh yeah, I really see this is really up high. There we go. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still struggle with my horizon lines unless I use a ruler. Okay. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. We might as well use the paint that we have. You see, I'm not making a super strong line like that for my mountains, my distant mountains. Because they're so far back in the distance, they need to be softened a bit. And it's going to come in at a little bit more. We could take some white in there, put some white. Let's get a little bit of action going here. See, little things like this. I don't like how round that is. Okay, you can come in and do some really interesting little things. Now it looks like there's trees back there. And with the white, now it looks like I've got some things happening. What I have to do now is I'm going to look here and I'm going to really straighten that out. So now while this is wet, we're going to take in the same mixture. We're going to add more blue and a speck more of the alizarin crimson and a little bit more burnt sienna. We're going to make it darker. Well, the only way to test to make it darker is we have to put it right on top. Not even close. So I'm going to take a little bit more burnt sienna, a little bit more ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin crimson. You can also make it a bit more green if you want, to make it look like there's trees. There we go. So I'm going to come right here. There's going to be a big cliff here, so I'm not worried about it. This is a way to help test the color. So I'm going to come in here. And no, I don't think this is still dark enough. Now, we have two ways to work this. We make this darker or make this part lighter. So that's two ways to do it. I'm just going to make it darker. So more blue, more red, and more brown. And I have got the sun right in my eyes now. Oh my God. Shouldn't complain. Shouldn't complain. So it's like this. So the big cliff is going to come right in here, and it's going to go like this and come down. So I want to bring this out a little bit more. Bring that down. So you can see there's, oh, made a boo-boo, who cares? There's going to be a cliff there. Doesn't matter. Now, you know what I can do? If I bring this right down, now look at this. We're going to create an inlet. Bring the water line down. Now we have an inlet in there. How far is that cliff going to come down here? We're going to create another inlet here. So this one here, this has to be relatively straight. So there we go. So now we have an inlet there. Now we're going to create another inlet here. And what I call an inlet is something where there's distances between rock and This is where I need the really sharp chisel edge here. Rock and water. Go. All right, so now we're going to take this mixture, we're going to make it even darker. Whoops, you know what I just did? I picked up phthalo blue. Well, my mind is telling me experiment, see what happens. But let's stick to the right process. Ultramarine blue, more alizarin crimson, permanent alizarin crimson, and a little bit more, just a little bit of burnt sienna. We're using less. And no, it's still too purple. I'm going to take more burnt sienna. And what we're looking at doing really is making a chromatic black, but more on the blue side. So whatever you have for your blue and your red, and you're only using a little bit of red, you're going to start adding roughly almost about half of that. There we go. Half of that of the brown. So if you've taken my color mixing course, you know that, I don't like using black out of the tube. So you can make your own black. And so we'll say 2 parts of a blue mixture and 1 part of a, 2 parts of a brown mixture and 1 part of a blue mixture. I think I got that reversed. So chromatic black on the brown side. Oh my God. And if you don't want to do color mixing, burnt umber. We're going to come up here. Need a little bit of water in that. And you know what? I'm going to put that brush away. I'm going to get a smaller brush. So I really want this to be choppy. You want this to be choppy. No perfect lines, but this mixture has to be darker than this distant mountain. It's not bad. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Now I'm adding more blue and brown. There we go. And we're going to come right down to here. So we're looking at here, here, looking right about here. Okay. So you're roughly going to make that like this. Now what I've noticed that we've got 2 pattern lines forming. That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to bring this out a little bit more. Running out of paint. Okay. Keep it nice and rough. Make more of that mixture. So blue, a speck of red, and burnt sienna. I'm going to come in here. We're going to work the opposite. So let's put another little one here. Remember that sketch we did in the beginning? Now, if you're not much of a freestyler, you can make your sketch or work from a photograph, and then you can use the lineless grid system to create a formal line drawing from your photo. We could even put another one here if you wanted to. So what I like is I've got stuff coming here, the mountains coming here, and this, but I'm not liking the way this is coming down like that. Not liking that. So let's just make a little bit of an adjustment here. There we go. And we can put another piece of rock here. So as things come closer and closer and closer, you're going to make them darker. You're going to make them darker and darker and darker. You can make that rough. You can make it, that looks like a dolphin. And take a little bit more burnt sienna. Make it a little bit darker. Okay, you can basically put in as many layers as you want. This really gives you a good opportunity to play. You see all those rough strokes? That's all going to add to the formations of those rocks. I like a nap. I'm not a fan of this. So how do we fix that? Well, we take the same mixture and we lighten it up. I'm just going to use the mixture that's on here already. So I already know it's ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson and a little bit of white. And I'm not liking the way that's working. And I think it's because it's just too large. It comes down to too much of a point. I'm going to straighten this out. But I'm going to make this a little bit higher. Now this isn't dark enough, so I'm going to have to take a little bit more of the dark mixture and come down like this. It was just too pointy. I'm going to break that line up. I'm going to break this line up. Let's break that line right there. There we go. So you got some nice, you have the background mountains showing through. What if you want to make those mountains bigger? Just get another mixture similar to that and just negative space. So you're going to paint right up here to bring that mountain higher. There's always ways around it when you're working with acrylics. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. Okay, are you dry yet? Not quite. So I'm just adding another layer. I can see a little bit of the canvas showing through here. I can actually even change the shape of this rock. That. What if you want to join it together? I'm just showing you all these different things you can do because I can pretty well guarantee you're going to do something and you go, I don't like this. You know what? That's part of the process. With acrylics, you can do so much because that's what it is. It's just acrylics. It's just paint. So I'm not making a rock that's really cut hard. Let's bring this up a little bit, make it rougher. Here we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now we've got a really rough rock here. Nice and rough. Okay. You can even put in just a little stone here if you wanted to, but let's just work with this. And at each point, the point that we did the sky and the water, that was a painting. Just with this background mountain, that was a painting. Adding this one in, that's a painting. Adding this one in, that's a painting. Adding this one in. So if you do the sky and water, you like what you have, do another painting with that, and then so you've got the water, the sky, and then that's a painting. Get another canvas, water, sky, add the background mountain. Get another canvas, put the water, sky, background mountain, and this mountain. And you make a series of these little pieces showing just the sky and water and then a progression up to the finished piece. Mount that onto another bigger piece of board or canvas, and you have like a story being told. All right, so let's come in here. I'm going to take my tiny little flat brush now with white, and I'm going to take a little bit of yellow oxide, and it's just to make it a little bit creamy. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to water on that. All I'm doing is I'm coming in and I'm just putting in some, defining some edges. Just creating some different values on here. And I'm making all these marks on, so that I'm pretending my sun is right here. So if we were to put our sun right there, and just the yellow oxide and white. You don't want to make these highlights white. And just looking, and I'm seeing some of these marks that are on here and where the paint is overlapping. All I'm doing is I'm adding some texture. You notice all I'm doing is just dragging the brush. Just dragging the brush. See? And I'm going to do the same thing now. And I'm going to take down some white on my dirty brush and go into that background mountain to get a lighter value than that. And I could just do a little bit of the same thing, not too much. When I first started teaching, I had some of my students were calling me the mountain lady. I thought that was kind of nice, but at that time when I was watching The Rifleman with Chuck Connors, and one of the episodes there was mountain folk in there, and I thought, is that what my students think of me? It was funny. Nothing wrong with that. It's just funny. Actually, they were just being they were complimenting me about how I was doing my mountains. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Just adding a little bit of value. And as time progresses, you can start really being detailed. And although this lesson, it is a simple seascape, it might seem like a lot of work. It's not. It's just a way to get some practice and to create a really nice little painting without spending 5 years in art school. So using that existing color, taking a little bit of white, coming in here now, I'm going to hit this a little bit harder. We're not going to do anything in this corner here because it's dark. Okay. And what I'm going to do though is here there's I don't know what I was thinking here. I'm just going to define a few little rocks here. Just scrubbing. I'm not highlighting these, I'm actually building the rock. I'm forming them. So think of if you're playing with, you've got plasticine. Oops, I think I just went into my sun. Some plasticine, and you're just forming everything. And I am just absolutely loving this. And as the paint is drying, it looks completely different. Oh, I want to show you something. Okay, so I'm going to take some paint. Achoo! And I did a big blob there. What do you do? Okay, well, if you're doing this in oils, you can scrape it off. But if you're doing it in acrylics, don't panic and go, oh, I got to get a wet paper towel and I got to wipe. No, don't worry about it. So you can let it dry. Or you can work on it with wet. So that's... Okay. You're just going to take the original mixture. Blue, red, burnt sienna. And you're going to come back in and you're going to negative space paint it. So you're going to come in and the color is not even close. This is purple. You're just going to go right over it and take a little bit more brown. And you're just going to basically paint right on top. But still using those choppy strokes, remember. Let's take the rest of the paint, and I see some of the blue from the canvas showing through, so let's just fix that up. I'll go to a bigger brush. Where's my big brush? So my brush has got phthalo blue in there, so let's just see what we can, dirty brush. So ultramarine blue, a little bit of red, and burnt sienna. Visually, I know what these colors are turning out like on my Unstick mat, but you may want to come in. You may want to come in and create your swatches. Just putting another layer of paint here because some of that watercolor is showing through. Okay, so you see now how that kind of just blended right in there? So now I'll just get my brush. And you know what, let's just work with this here. Let's just work with that mixture right here. Take some white in there, lighten that value up. Wipe off the excess. And just start building it up again. I will tell you that for me, highlighting mountains in acrylics, you get a really soft look. Highlighting mountains in oils is unreal. See, I'm putting a little bit more dark in there. Because with acrylics, if you want to do it like a wet on wet, you do have to wait for stuff to dry. Sorry, you can't let the stuff dry. You got to work fast. But it's working with oils is a completely different process. And I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre. I just realized I was making the mixture with the wrong colors. A little bit of water. I still had a little bit of yellow, blue in my brush. Now I'm working with a bit of a bigger brush. Want to define that a little bit better. Use your fingers, blend that in. Okay. And you're just going to play with this. And we already know if we make a mistake, what do? We just cover it up with dark. And what I'm doing with my finger doing this is what, when you work with a bristle brush, you can blend that in. I'm going to get this flat part here, like a little ridge. See what I did there? The unfortunate thing is you have to do the work to do this. I can't tell you the pressure. You're going to feel it in the brush. And this is a great exercise to get you learning what your brush can do. It's a dry brush. You're just dragging the brush on there. And the most common problem is perfection and patterns, and you end up making, a lot of people end up making the when they make their mountains, they'll come in and then they'll do their mountain. Then when they do their highlight, they'll come in and they'll do this. Then they'll do this. Then they'll do this. It's the same pattern. You have to break up the pattern. So you notice that my strokes, although the strokes are on the top left side, because that's where the sun is, that they are coming down this way, because that's the way a mountain goes. A mountain is like that. The light coming through the window. Okay. Pretty neat. So I'm going to take some more of that color here, and now I'm just going to put a little bit of a highlight right in here. Oh, I've got the sun glaring in my face. a little bit of light here. And what all this is, also what this is doing is creating a the water on top. I just changed to a little round brush, and now I'm just going to go in the bottom, and I'm going to take that same mixture, which is the yellow, the white with the yellow oxide, and I'm just going to line the bottom, which looks like there's water going up against the rock. And this part here can be a little bit tedious. Like what I just put too much water in there. Okay. And what I'm trying to avoid is getting that the perfect line. I don't want a perfect line. I'm going to make some little zigzag marks. Okay. And it needs to be really transparent there. I'm just flattening out my little round brush a little bit. If you have a script liner brush, that would work out well here. That brush, I have trouble with control. Now I'm just making some little horizontal, the tiniest, and this is where you can develop a pattern too. You're going to make those little lines all the same. And be at the ready that you can take your finger and wipe off if you use a bit too much pressure. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit more white, and right in here I'm creating a little bit more action in here because the water is as it's coming through, a little bit of waves, a little bit of ripples. You don't need much to get something happening. Now remember, we're doing this freestyle. I'm not working from a photograph. So if you're working from a photograph, then you can make the lines, paint it, as per the photograph. And what I'm doing with this is I'm painting what I know. Now in art, that could be kind of dangerous because you paint what you see, not what you know. But I've been doing this for such a long time that I have an idea of what I want to do, and the goal for this is to teach you, about take little paintings and create, cute little pieces of art. Not so much cute. It sounds like it's being demeaned, but it's just creating something really, really nice. And you would not believe the actual skills that you're building up just with this little painting. You're learning dry brushing. You're learning brush control. You're learning blending. How to fix up some happy accidents. See how rough I made that? So it looks like there's rock. Bunch of rocks in here. And there's that rock that's here. If I just take what's left over my brush and just put that in there. No, not working with the round brush. I was trying to cheat. Oh, you know what I haven't shown you? The bristle brush. Oh, I think it's a little late though. And this brush is in such rough shape. See all the hairs that are sticking out? So when I use a bristle brush, especially for acrylic painting, I mean, this is really rough. But it does help with the avoiding patterns. Because all you're doing is just scrubbing. And even in here you can scrub a little bit. Just be careful. Okay, so like I said, the round brushes, the bristle brushes, when they get into water, they get all splayed in that, and that's typically what you do. What happens? They're rough, so you don't want to spend a lot of money on getting like really, really high-end bristle brushes for acrylic painting. A synthetic bristle, something like this. Okay, so it's think of it as part this brush and part this brush, and the brush stays in much better condition. But that's beyond the scope of this project. So there we go. What do you whoopsie, what do you think? There's a paint splatter in there. I have a paint splatter here. Well, you know what? That happens. Let's fix that up. And you guys know by now, if this is your first time watching, you'll know that when I make mistakes or when something happens, I don't stop the video, fix it, and then edit all that out. I actually show you how to fix it. Because I'm not a perfect artist. I don't think there is a perfect artist. Well, except for Richard Schmid and Singer Sargent. My mentor, Buck Paulson. That puts a lot of pressure, doesn't it? So let's fix that up. So how are we going to fix this? I mean, if you're going to frame it, it's fine. But I'm going to show you how to fix it. So let's take some white. We're going to try to mimic that color. So we're going to make, so I already know that it was with ultramarine blue, white, and a tiny little speck of phthalo blue. Keeping in mind acrylics dry darker, so we're going to go in here and think, okay, well I want to make it just a little bit lighter, but I'm not going to spend so much time worrying about it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. And actually the bristle brush, this is where the bristle brush would come in handy. And all I'm doing is I'm just covering it up. And thinking, okay, well I'm going to make that a little bit bluer. But I'm wiping the brush as I go because I don't want it to be, I don't want to put so much paint on there. And now what I can do is I can use this opportunity to add more clouds. And this is, the paint is drying to the dry surface, or sorry, this is wet on dry. I want it wet on wet, so I'm taking a little bit of water in my brush and I'm just going to dampen the surface, dampen my little board. Then if I come in with the paint, now it flows. So see how I covered up the mountain there? Just to get some of that color in there. Paper towel. I can even use my finger, making sure your hands are clean. So you can do all that blending. There's all these different things that you can do. Come right in here. Because there's water in the brush, it's glazing a transparent layer of color. Well, oh no, we lost our cloud. I can take a little bit of white and I can just glaze a little bit of that in there. Again, transparent layer, and add the white back. Now our mark is gone. We have some interesting little cloud formations going on here. I can take a little bit more of this blue, come right about here. And this is something you really need to know how to do, is to fix up your mistakes. Because they will happen. They will happen. But if you know your brushes, know some color mixing, know how your paints work, things aren't so bad. That's it. How's that? You like it? So give that a try, and remember just to play, have fun, and I see that this brush, how rough that is. Now I'm just experimenting to see what I can do. It creates some really neat lines. So just have fun, experiment, and see what you can do, and just play and have fun. So we learned, let's see, we learned wet on wet painting. We learned painting a sky, painting water, same technique with the blending. We learned about making water a little bit cooler with some phthalo blue and some yellow. We learned by using a brush with choppy strokes to create rock formations. We learned about values, light, medium, dark, and which creates the perspective and distance, and so creates, you know, distance and close up. Let's see, we learned about fixing mistakes with paint splotches. We learned about how to highlight just by mixing up some colors. Learned about putting water, using a brush to create little ripples. Learned so much, and everything you learned in this painting you will apply in other paintings. So just build up those skills and practice. And how cute is that? I mean, it's a cute little piece. Don't forget to sign it in the corner. This is a good place to sign it. And for signing, take a color that's in the painting and use that color to sign it. So for this one here, I could take this color, make it darker, or use this color and just sign it as well. So this is ready to be framed in a little 4x6 frame, or if you're painting this on a little canvas that's back stapled, meaning it's a canvas and the staples are on the back, you just have to finish the sides and you're ready to go. For finishing your little piece, now let it dry. Personally, I'd say let it dry 24 hours before you varnish it. And if it's going to be in an area that has a lot of humidity or high traffic, I would apply a coat of satin varnish onto this, following the directions on the bottle, which is super detailed, and then let it dry and then hang it up. Typically, I learned from Jerry Yarnell that acrylics really don't need to be sealed because they have think of it like liquid plastic type of thing. I prefer still to varnish just from a cleaning standpoint, that if, you know, especially if you're in a kitchen and, you know, you've got oils and stuff like that in the air, that it's like, for us, Mia, she coming from the rain, she shakes. And I've got paintings that are 6 feet up on the wall and there's mud splatters on them. So by sealing them, it just makes it easier to clean without damaging the painting. Alrighty, so I hope that you enjoyed this and give it a shot. And if you have a photograph that you'd like to try to work with that, you know, you can use a lineless grid system to create your sketch on that. But let me know if you have any trouble. Comment below the video with your questions or if you need any help with anything. And you know, feel free to share the picture with me. You can email it to me, or you can post it in the comments below, and or you can even share it in the private Facebook group. Alrighty, so I'm going to get ready for the next project, and until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.